so ridiculous. How does a court decision put women in their place? Just nonsense. The perfect victim. What in God's name is a perfect victim? It was like tit for tat, and it just went backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and the drama continued right down to the last minute. Hi, my name's Tracy Maloney. I'm a UK family lawyer with over 20 years of experience, otherwise known as the legal queen on social media. So today I'm going to be reviewing episode 3 of the Netflix series Depp versus Heard. For those of you that follow me, you'll know I've already reviewed episode 1 and episode 2, where we saw a stark contrast between the evidence given by Johnny and the evidence given by Amber. So I'm very excited to watch episode 3 with you. Let's jump right in.
I just don't know what to make of this case, other than I seem to have spent half my life listening to these two in courtrooms.
It's hard to understand why some...
I think we'd all have to agree with Piers Morgan there. We absolutely felt as if this is all we were listening to at the time that it was playing out.
...that supposed to love you could be that cruel.
He just kicked me in the back.
I don't know who to believe.
It didn't happen.
I don't know how much of it is true. They're two actors.
You can really just feel...
What strikes me about Pierce's comment there, he doesn't know who to believe. I mean, as a lawyer, my first comment would be, well, the jury are making that decision. But ultimately, I think the reason that Pierce is confused, like so many of us were confused, is because this was turning into a social media jury.
How much of a psychopath this woman is.
And people like that were becoming so passionate about it all. They were really invested into this trial.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. All right, your next witness.
Your Honor, defendant calls Amber Heard.
Just a reminder, Ms. Hurt, you're still under oath, okay?
Of course, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, your question.
How have you suffered publicly?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
There was a general sense here of speculation, and hence Camille objected to that question being asked. What is the relevance of that? How Amber has felt during the trial? You know, throughout my observations of this case and my general review of this case, I've always tried to remind you guys that when it comes to a court of law, it is about evidence. It is about facts. So Camille has objected there because what does it matter how she has felt, how she feels she has been treated? That's Amber's situation. That's Amber's view on it all.
It's insane to hear heinous accusations of violence, sexual violence, that she's attributed to me, that she's accused me of.
This is horrible. This is painful. And this is humiliating for any human being.
It's at this point, I think, that the trial began to turn into almost a reality show. You know, Amber is so theatrical in her responses. She is unable towards the end to even answer a question normally and with a sense of calmness and with a sense of clarity without turning on the emotions.
And perhaps it's easy to forget that I'm a human being.
Brutal, cruel, and all false. All false.
I just want Johnny to leave me alone.
It's almost a cry of desperation from Amber. You know, Johnny is very calm in his responses, and somebody once said to me, the truth is very easy to tell. You don't need to put on the theatrics if you're telling the truth.
I just find the whole thing uncomfortable to watch. I haven't plugged into it at all. I don't really want to see such intimate detail.
I've got to give a shout out to the loose women from obviously this side of the pond. I think the equivalent in the US is a show called The Talk or something like that. But it's interesting. We have 4 women on here who are on our TVs here in the UK every day. And even they are saying how uncomfortable this was to watch. How they actually got to a stage where they didn't want to hear the ins and outs of their relationship and of their marriage, and they didn't want to see a couple airing their dirty laundry on TV. Goes to show just how far away from the actual trial the case had moved.
Amber snuck in she got the roundhouse in, and
that visual there from Johnny, it really does demonstrate that, Amber is claiming to be a victim of domestic violence, but clearly they were as bad as each other. If Amber's testimony is to be believed, then Johnny's has to be believed. Johnny is giving a visual, he's demonstrating how Amber punched him, and then showing us a photograph of a deliberate bruise just beneath the eye.
It is the only instance where a witness, Amber's sister, is claiming to have actually witnessed firsthand assault alleged against Johnny Depp.
Grabbed Amber by the hair with one hand and was whacking her repeatedly in the face with the other. I don't hesitate, I don't wait, I just...
In my head, instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs.
And I think it's got to be agreed, therein lay the major downfall in Amber's case. To bring up Kate Moss and to insinuate that not only had he kicked her in the back, but he'd also kicked Kate in the back, when actually that transpired not to be true. I think a jury's going to look at Amber in a very different light. Your credibility in a courtroom is really important. Don't raise that comment about Kate when actually we don't know if that's true or not. What we do know is that Kate and Johnny had a relationship, so there's every possibility that Johnny's team may call Kate as a witness, which ultimately they did. So be careful about what you're saying, Amber.
In a hotel room.
I believe in fairness and justice. I believe in the truth.
That comment from Kate about believing in fairness and justice and truth, Kate had nothing to gain from speaking her truth. There was no incentive for her except to perhaps assist a friend here. I think was very damaging to Amber's case.
Just going back to the incident where Depp and her got in a fight on an airplane.
So I'm going to take you to the Boston
Plane incident. The plan, we'd go back to LA for his daughter's birthday. And I get on the plane.
And I just knew in every cell of my body something was wrong.
Not a great move from Amber's team to use incidents of domestic violence that took place prior to the wedding, because it undermines Amber's testimony. To describe now, after the divorce, of incidents where she felt as traumatised and as victimised as she did. But then this instance they're talking about, the Boston plane, happened in May 14 and they got married in early 15. From the jury's perspective, you'd almost be sitting there thinking, well, if it was that bad, really, why would you go on and marry him? A skillful legal team would be sure to focus on incidents that happened after the wedding as opposed to before.
He just kicked me in the back. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. No one said anything. No one did anything. It was like you could hear a pin drop on that plane.
You could feel the tension, but no one did anything.
I felt so embarrassed that he could kick me to the ground in front of people.
In my view, that has always been and was Amber's downfall. She was just way too dramatic. It was fairly ridiculous just how dramatic that she got. The facial expressions, the shortness of breath, the attempt to cry. She's being asked to describe the incident that took place on the plane. Now, this happened 6 years. This trial was taking place 6 years after that incident. I appreciate that to recall an incident can be painful, but without all the theatrics, I think that really did affect her credibility.
He continued to drink and then eventually started howling like an animal and passed out in the bathroom with the door locked.
If that vocal or that recording is of Johnny, it does leave us feeling a little bit conflicted, because throughout all of this, it was definitely Team Johnny. You know, Johnny was just the better person at giving evidence. Johnny's legal team seemed to be all over it. However, Amber did make some really valid points, and some of the evidence that she managed to get through that was admissible did show Johnny in a very bad light. Now, if that is Johnny howling like an animal in the toilet on the airplane, you would question if actually the other things that Amber was saying were actually true.
They didn't get that Duder stuff in.
Okay. After that sidebar, attorney Ben Rottenborn moves on, and those texts stay out of evidence.
Why would you want to exclude evidence? Because it hurts you, that's why.
Perhaps you asked to exclude evidence not because it hurts you, but because it's inadmissible. Perhaps it has no relevance. Clearly, the judge was able to consider the text messages that they're referring to and found that actually it's just not going to take this case forward any. It's simply not relevant. There was also some speculation around the validity of those text messages, where the reporter from TMZ said that what they had been given by Amber had been heavily edited. And the same was argued about these text messages from Johnny's PA, that actually they were heavily edited to make Johnny look like he was in a bad light. Whatever the reason, judge felt they weren't relevant.
Paul Bettany's a good friend that you've done drugs with, right?
That's a strange question. Paul Bettany is a good friend. Yes.
The two of you shared an enjoyment of controlled drugs and alcohol at that time. Yes or no?
Yes.
You've done drugs.
Dark humor.
The text messages that I apologize that everyone's had to experience.
But they've undermined it again. This is where Amber's team, I feel her legal team, let her down again and again and again. So the questioning of Johnny starts with, you are good friends with this person, are you not? Yes, I am. And you would regularly do drugs with him? Yes, I would. And you would regularly drink with him? Yes, I would. Now please explain to us, Johnny, the text messages that you sent to him. Well, reframe it, because actually it leaves the door wide open for Johnny to say, yes, the text messages were really dark, but we were both under the influence. We would share a dark sense of humour. They allowed Johnny to circumnavigate what they were really trying to prove and get the jury back on his side again.
Embarrassed that at the time, the heat of the moment, the heat of the pain that I was feeling went to dark places.
And now we feel sorry for Johnny again, because he talks about the shame and he talks about the guilt and he talks about the fact that, you know, the pain and the drugs did bring him to some dark places. So that line of questioning, totally irrelevant.
Thank you. Maybe seated. All right. Closing arguments. Mr. Rottenborn? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Think about the message that Mr. Depp and his attorneys are sending to Amber, and by extension to every victim.
The closing arguments for me were possibly the best part of it, because the drama continued. You know, how Netflix now portrays Amber's team doing their closing arguments and Johnny's team doing his closing arguments. It was like tit for tat. You know, they both got up, they made some wild allegations about each other, and it just went backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and the drama continued right down to the last minute.
She came into this courtroom prepared to give the performance of her life, and she gave it.
You didn't seek medical treatment, you weren't injured. If you did seek medical treatment, you're crazy.
Now it's time for you, the jury, to come to a decision.
This trial is about so much more than Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard.
What is at stake in this trial is a man's good name.
It's about the freedom of speech. Stand up for it. Protect it.
What is at stake at this trial is a man's life.
Really? That was the point where I just thought, Camille, you've been watching Amber for far too long. You yourself have now turned into a little bit of an actress. What's at stake in this trial is a man's life. This is a defamation case. This is about who said what about who, and actually, if we're going to win $50 million at the end of it.
The mountain of evidence that Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard is simply not there.
a smear campaign that lasts to this very day.
Either he hit her countless times, or you can't believe a single word that comes out of her mouth.
He will do everything he can to destroy your life, to destroy your career.
All right. It is out of my hands. So just a reminder that you're not to read anything about this case, you're not to watch anything about this case, you're not to listen to anything about this case.
For those of you old enough to remember, it reminds me so much of the O.J. Simpson trial. You know, at the end when the judge was summing up, they said the same. You can't speak to anybody about this case. You can't watch anything on the news or read anything in the newspapers. And that had been the exact same circus that this had been.
Jury's been dismissed for the weekend, so that's it. Now we have a long weekend and wait until Tuesday.
The fact that it continued whilst the jury were deliberating and considering the verdict that they were going to hand down, it just demonstrates how much this had turned into a reality TV show. People were frustrated that the jury had taken 3 days. You know, I've known juries in criminal trials to take weeks to come to a decision, a unanimous decision, because everybody has to be in agreement with the decision. But it seems that the people that were posting stuff on social media were just living their life around this whole trial.
I'm very disappointed in the jury verdict. I think this is another big win for powerful men, and it's a colossal loss for women.
I disagree with that. I don't think it was a colossal loss for women. I think that if we remember the fact that we're in a court of law, it comes down to evidence. Amber would have been advised by her legal team as to how to carry herself and how to present her case throughout this. This wasn't a loss for women. This was simply that Johnny's team presented better evidence. Amber didn't have the evidence. Let's remember that Johnny brought this action because of the comments and the allegations that Amber had made to the press that went worldwide, that went viral. Now, if those allegations were true, I think that Amber could have had far stronger and much better evidence.
Somebody that we know, somebody that we maybe like, they don't want to have to think this person is really capable of doing what's alleged in court.
This powerful open letter states that they don't stand with her. They don't accept that she is who she claimed to be. We will not stand with you. No victim of domestic violence acts in the manner in which you do.
And I think that was the final blow for Amber. That really was. When you have women who are victims of domestic violence putting together an open letter, which is now going to transcend across the globe, saying that they will not stand with her, that has to be the final blow for Amber and her legal team.
Listening to you has been torturously painful, triggering, and unbearable for many.
The harm you've done going forward to every woman who goes to report domestic violence is immeasurable, but you've reminded the army of survivors that abuse has no gender and that a man who speaks out about being abused must too be heard. Then you weaponized our movement against the person you had victimized. All this for what? The minute survivors heard you say, "You make me do this," we knew who you really were.
It's quite true. You know, we did hear Amber say to Johnny during an argument, "You make me do this." I mean, she was weaponizing. She was making out that she was the victim when, in fact, she too was abusing Johnny. And there was evidence that left no doubt in our minds about that. Just wanted to pause the reacts right there. Hope you guys are enjoying this new form of content that I'm doing. I'm really enjoying being back on YouTube full time again. If you would like to see more of these reacts, then please leave me some comments below telling me what sort of shows that you would like me to react to. As a UK lawyer, obviously I love reacting to the legal stuff, but actually if there's other things that you want me to react to, then by all means leave your comments below. Now back to the video.
What we're seeing happen, stereotypes that are coming out, right, that are calling Amber Heard a liar, glorifying Johnny Depp as this amazing man, right, is the reason why Me Too started. It's why activists really wanted to fight for this movement and why it's so important, because...
And I totally agree that the Me Too movement is very important. Absolutely. As a woman, I would stand behind that. However, what I think the public opinion is now doing is saying that actually, because Johnny was an abuser, he can't stand up and say anything about that either. You know, it's not easy for a man to stand up and say, I have been a victim of abuse. For Johnny to have to accept that Amber hit him and punched him and threw things at him and took the top of his finger off. And he says he never once laid a hand on her. She was unable to provide the photographs that Johnny did. That couldn't have been easy for him. So let's not forget that we had two people here, both saying that they were victims, both saying that the other was the abuser.
What does it mean for that? Are we at the end of Me Too? Is this a reversal? Where are we?
I mean, it's a backlash to Me Too. And what we're seeing unfold on the internet is that we're proving them right. We're saying that, yes, you will be silenced, you will be humiliated.
I disagree that Amber was silenced. I think that Amber very much had a voice throughout this trial. She was given a fair opportunity to defend Johnny's claims that what she had said was lies, and for these two young ladies to now give an interview to say that actually this has really damaged the Me Too movement because people who are true victims of domestic violence will no longer come forward and that they will remain silenced. I think it flies in the face of what happened, if I'm honest.
But I am feeling some kind of way about the way that Heard is being inhumanely attacked every day on a global scale. And here's what this means for victims of abuse. Fewer victims will come forward, especially if they haven't been perfect during the course of their relationship with the abuser. So if you're not the perfect victim...
The perfect victim. What, in God's name, is a perfect victim? You know, you can't sit there and say that if you are not the perfect victim, then you will not be listened to. You are a victim or you're not a victim. You've experienced abuse or you haven't experienced abuse. If we're asking the courts to make a finding on whether or not we are telling the truth, it comes down to the evidence.
First question, how is Amber doing?
One of the first things she said is, I am so sorry to all those women out there.
And yet Amber wouldn't take any responsibility for her part in that setback. That's very interesting that this is the first interview her lawyer is giving. The first question to her lawyer is, how is she feeling? She's terribly upset by how this will make other victims of domestic abuse feel. But actually, I think that there's a massive piece missing there that perhaps Amber contributed towards that.
They have families. The families are on social media.
Do you believe the jurors saw any of that, were swayed by any of that?
No, I don't think there's any reason to believe.
What else are they going to say? Seriously, what else can they say to that? They can't say yes. It has to be a no. And I think I mentioned in episode 1, when I was reviewing episode 1, no one's ever going to know the truth. No one's ever going to know the real truth unless you were in the room with Johnny and Amber. And the same could be said for the jury. Were the jury influenced by social media? We'll never know. Obviously, Amber's team says absolutely they were. Johnny's team says no, they weren't. We're never going to know the answer to that.
It is everywhere, but at the same time, they were admonished every single night. And they had a tremendous amount of respect, I think, for the court and the process, and they were doing the best that they could.
I was against cameras in the courtroom, and I went on record with that and had argued against it because of the sensitive nature of this.
The court system, the personnel, the admin would have been fully aware of the extent of the social media circus that was going on. That would have been passed on to the judge. That would have then been passed on to the jury. The jury would have been made fully aware that, look, there is a lot going on out there. So every evening when you go home, please take extra measures, special measures, if you will, to make sure that you refrain from being caught up in that. And I think that particularly English juries that I've witnessed and that I've had the privilege of being a part of and to observe an English jury, they take their role very seriously.
This is the case that, though there is a verdict, just will not end. Why? Because Amber Heard has not stopped talking about this case.
She sat down for an exclusive interview with Savannah Guthrie. I think you guys are going to hear this one.
Even if you think that I'm lying,
you still couldn't look me in the eye and tell me that you think on social media there's been a fair representation.
But that's irrelevant, Amber. You know, we aren't looking to what social media are doing and if there was a fair representation of you or of Johnny. It's about what happened within the court system. It's about what happened every day when you were on the stand and the performance that you gave. It really doesn't matter what was going on in the outside world.
And the jury is not immune to that.
You think the jury saw it?
How could they not? I think even the most well-intentioned juror.
As a lawyer, it's very difficult. You never quite take sides because it does come down to the evidence. But when I saw Amber's interview on NBC, it seemed to me that she was doing everything to blame social media for the fact that she lost her case to Johnny, as opposed to maybe analysing her own legal material. You have just lost this case. Why do you then go on to NBC to be seen worldwide saying that actually only for social media, I probably would have won my case?
That we all are angry at you.
The Depp team argued that you were the abuser.
I never had to instigate it. I responded to it.
I mean, that's quite damning there. I never had to instigate it. I responded to it. Why would you want to instigate domestic violence? Her choice of language there. Amber's very clumsy with her words. She's very clumsy in how she articulates how she's feeling. And I think that, you know, it continues. The damage to her own credibility, to her own image, public perception, clearly continued long after the jury had handed down what they decided was the right outcome and gone home.
Then there are other times, there's another tape where you're taunting him and saying, oh, tell the world, Johnny Depp, I, a man, am a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah. 20-second clips, so the transcripts of them are not representative of 2 hours or the 3 hours. Those.
But you said it. You said it. You are there on tape saying, you tell the world, Johnny, that you are a victim of domestic violence. That's not taken out of context.
Amber Heard wanted to characterize Johnny Depp as a character. There were many memes from the trial, but now memes from the interview.
The Depp lawyer called your testimony the performance of a lifetime and said you were acting. What do you say to that?
Says the lawyer for the man who convinced the world he had scissors for fingers.
How ridiculous. How ridiculous was that? He didn't convince the world that he had scissors for fingers. He was playing a part. I mean, somebody needs to stop this woman. She's just being ridiculous.
We now live in a time where we don't necessarily believe who's right. We believe who we like the most because of who they are. The outcome of this trial will have ramifications, if nothing else, how people...
I disagree with that. I don't think that we do make a decision about people that we like. I think, again, that undermines public opinion. That undermines people's morals. Now, the outcome of this case was that Johnny won his case. Absolutely, he won the defamation case. However, you know, what we heard during that trial about Johnny, what we saw, some of the evidence that Amber gave, didn't leave a bad taste in our mouth. Doesn't mean that we don't like Johnny any less. I mean, I think one of the reporters there said that he's an absolutely great actor, but potentially a violent lover. So I don't think that we do make decisions based on purely what we like. I think there is an ability for everyone to determine between right or wrong. They decided to settle out of court with Amber giving Johnny $1 million. What I would love to know as a UK lawyer is what the legal bill was in all of this. It would run to tens of millions of pounds, perhaps even hundreds of millions of pounds, because it went on for that long. To end the play, to end the movie that it's been described as, to end the circus with a mere £1 million being handed from Amber to Johnny. Wow, how good was that? That Netflix series I thought was exceptional, the way they presented that. Really took me back to when the trial was on live for the first time that we saw it. I know that public opinion is very much divided over the Depp and Heard case, but my personal opinion is that it will always come down to the law. It was so interesting for me as a UK lawyer to see how an American court works. I remember when I first watched O.J. Simpson, way back in the day. I wasn't qualified then and I wasn't practicing law. So I was able to take part in that whole media explosion. There's no social media back then. It was all what was on the radio and what was in the newspapers. But it was very different for me this time watching the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp case, particularly through the Netflix series, because I was able to watch it with legal eyes and how the court system played out with the cameras and the accountability of social media and how both of them were addressed, asking them how they felt about it, was quite bizarre to me. You know, we don't ask people who are on the stand how they felt about the social media ramifications of what was playing out at that time. But anyway, I won't waffle on anymore. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Cannot wait to do the next one with you. Leave me your comments, guys. And of course, don't forget, if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe.